Okay, we're back. Today we're talking about the Antiquarian, and we're going to do a review for her for Darkest Dungeon. We're going to talk about things like her stats, her skills, her camp skills, everything, just resistances, everything that has to do with the Antiquarian. So first off, we're going to swap over to her stats, which would be here. So on this page, you see on the bottom that the Antiquarian has been kind of extracted compared to the averages of all the other characters in the game. Um, Really quick, we're going to go through. Yeah, you can see she's right here. She's got the lowest HP in the game, very below average. She's got only slightly above average dodge. You can tell she's not a very durable character. She's got average speed, below average crit, below average damage, actually the lowest in the game as well. So you can tell she's not very good at dealing damage because her crit is so low and her damage range is so low. She's got below average everything across the board, basically. So she's more susceptible to bleeds and blights. She's susceptible to stuns. She's susceptible to disease. She's susceptible to debuffs. She can be moved around easily. She can't even trap disarm very well. It's below average. She can move. She can be moved around. She can be shuffled easily. My bad. This is shuffled basically, and this is actually moving. She can actually move to forward and to back, which means she can go from any position into a position where she works, because she works in positions 3 and 4. So overall, what can we get from these stats? We get that she sucks, is actually what it is, because these stats are horrible. These are the worst in the game in like basically everything that you can conceivably say. Because she's like the worst durability, she's got the worst damage, she's got the worst resists, right? So why is she in the game? Why do we even look at her? Like, why is she even worth running, right? So she's worth running because she has an inherent character specific, class specific bonus to gaining and making money. And how does she do that? She does that by when you take her into a dungeon, when you take her into a comp, she increases the stackability of your gold. So regularly in a regular dungeon without taking Antiquarian, you can stack gold up to 1750 gold. So each inventory slot can hold 1750 gold, right? For every Antiquarian you bring into that dungeon, each stack size increases by 750. So if you bring one Antiquarian, 1750 goes to 2500. You can hold 2500 gold in each slot. So she brings in more money by allowing you to bring back more money, right? The other thing she does, the other money-oriented thing she does, is if you use the Antiquarian to interact with curios and they drop loot, it is also guaranteed on the side of that loot to drop something called an antique. There are two types of antiques for the Antiquarian. There are two types of antiques that can drop. The minor antique, which is the more common one, which stacks up to 15 and sells for a good chunk of money, and the rare antique, which sells for like a very large amount of money, stacks for less, but still sells for a lot overall. These two antiques, they are worth more in a stack when you collect enough of them. They sell for more than 2,500 gold for sure. So it's worth it to collect them over gold. Is what I'm trying to say, but it's very hard for me to say that for some reason. Basically, she's very good at making gold, right? She's very bad at she's actually very good at a lot of things, right? But and we'll talk about it later as we go through her skills and her camp skills. But she's very bad at combat, which is 90% of the game, which means she's just bad, really. But let's see what we can do with her to make her not as bad, right? So let's go through her skills. The first, okay. Oh, and obviously this is my optimal setup, kind of. We can talk about what decisions I would make differently. There are slight changes I would make to this set, for increased optimization, I guess, of an Antiquarian. The first one is I would actually run Nervous Tickle pretty often over her second move, which is Festering Vapors. These two moves are her damaging options. Nervous Tickle can be launched from all 4 ranks and can hit the first 3 ranks, so she's kind of very versatile in terms of where you can launch her damage from. The thing is that she also has the lowest base damage in the game, so this won't actually do that much. It actually does so little, in fact, that I call this move Nervous Tickle a lot instead of Nervous Stab. It really just tickles the enemy. It really doesn't do much. It's also got a 7% crit rate, which is actually pretty decent, but with the below average crit that she has, it doesn't turn out to be critting very often. 12 crit is 1 every 8-ish moves. Not very notable compared to the actual crit monsters in the game. Yeah, so in the early game, Nervous Tickle over here, Nervous Stab here, it does a good amount of damage compared to Festering Vapors, because in the early game, Festering Vapors only blights for 1/3. But in the late game, Festering Vapors overtakes Nervous Stab by a bit. You can see right here, 5 to 9 is what Nervous Stab would do, because it has no damage modifiers, so it'll do 5 to 9. Festering Vapors, on the other hand, will at least deal, with a damage mod of negative 75%, it'll at least deal, let's do some quick math, 75% of this would be 2, it'd be 2 to 75%, what's 25% of 9? 2 to 3. It'll do 2 to 3 and then add 4 blight. So it'll actually deal 6 to 9. So Festering Vapors does 1 point of minimum damage greater. And it is a dot, so it essentially dealt, when you apply it, it deals 12 damage in terms of blight. But that's over 3 turns, so we can't really call that damage. But even on the first turn of using Festering Vapors, you've already gained more value on average than using a Nervous Tickle. Not to mention, Festering Vapors actually has the highest accuracy in the game at 115, while Nervous Tickle has one of the lowest accuracies in the game at 105. You'll find that Nervous Stab will miss more often than Festering Vapors, obviously, and so as a general rule of thumb, Nervous Stab in the late game won't be as good as Festering Vapors. In the early game, though, I would run Nervous Stab, and obviously against enemies with high blight resist, I would run Nervous Stab instead. Yeah, so Festering Vapors, we just talked about it. Just a okay damage move. Blight, it's one of the lowest blight. It's actually the lowest blight in the game, but I mean, it is something that she can do to help the team output damage. So it's a staple. So I would pick one of these two for sure. These 3 are locked in. We'll talk about why. But let's go through these unlocked in skills that I don't think are very good. So Get Down. Get Down can be launched from any row, from any rank, and it moves you back 2, and it buffs 25 dodge and plus 5 speed on the Antiquarian, and gives the Antiquarian plus 15% chance to her Blight skill chance. So what's wrong with this skill? There's a lot of things wrong with the skill. The first thing is that your Antiquarian is in the front 2 ranks, probably when you're using this, because why would you use this in the back 2? So if you run the skill, you're expecting your Antiquarian to be in the front, or you're, for some reason, forcing your Antiquarian to be in the front to lead with. And that's pretty bad. Do not put your Antiquarian in the front. You do not want your Antiquarian taking damage, and the front 2 ranks are where you take the most damage. The Antiquarian is the frailest unit in the game. She is most likely to die if you put her in a damaging and dangerous position. Do not do that to your Antiquarian. So dodge this is a really, really heavy dodge buff, actually. But when you move her to the back, it doesn't matter as much, because she's not going to get hit by many moves anyway in the back, because a lot of enemies will only be able to target the front 2 ranks. So moving her to the back with that back 2 tag on it, on Get Down, not really helpful. The dodge is okay, but not really worth mentioning. Plus 5 speed, it might look really good because, oh, we buffed a middling speed character into a high speed category, but Antiquarians being the frailest character in the game, I really do not want them being faster than my Vestal, or my Occultist, or my Arbalist, or any other kind of off-healer. I want them as relatively close to those healers as possible, because if she gets on Death's Door and has a dot, I want to get her off of Death's Door so that the dot doesn't kill her. She is going to die if you don't. If you have a speedy Antiquarian, she is very likely to die. There's no point to have. There's no even point to having a speedy Antiquarian. She's not a stunner. She's not a damage dealer. There's no reason to have her be this fast. So the speed, the +5 speed, although it looks very juicy, is not very good. Is actually actively bad. And the blight chance, you're telling me that you want. So if you're trying to convince me that this get down is good because of the blight skill chance, you're trying to convince me that plus 15% skill chance for blight is worth it for Festering Vapors, which is their only blight move, which is a 4x3 blight. This is the worst blight in the game. Do not use get down just for the blight skill chance. Don't use get down, period, actually. So, Flash Powder. Flash Powder is pretty interesting. It's got a bypass stealth and a de-stealth component to it, which gives her some form of utility against those enemies who are stealthed. I tend to, against stealth enemies, I tend to just wait out their stealth timers and deal with them afterwards, because there's usually other priority targets anyway just to deal with while they're stealthed. So I'm okay with just kind of dealing with those guys who are not stealthed first, and then going back to kill off those who are stealthed later after they've de-stealthed themselves. So that part is, I don't really value the de-stealth aspect of this move very highly. The part of it that I do kind of value highly is the minus 15 accuracy part, which is actually the highest. Is it the highest? Let's actually check real quick with the Arbalist. The other minus accuracy is suppressing fire in the game, which is 20. No, it's not even the highest. Oh man, the Antiquarian, man, you never catch a break. It's just everything's not good enough. Right, so it's the second highest. There we go. You get that title. You get the silver medal Antiquarian. So it's the second highest minus accuracy debuff in the game. It can be launched from any position into any of the enemy's positions. So there is merit here in that you could kind of spam this on enemies and kind of help you in the stalling phase of a fight, where you're just kind of recovering people up. Actually, yeah, this might actually be runnable, now that I think of it. Like, maybe over... Well, let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. Let's think... Let me present all of the rest, and then we'll talk about if we want to run Flash Powder or not. I still don't think it's actually very runnable. But minus 15 accuracy is one of the heavier accuracy debuffs in the game. And being able to make someone miss over and over again during stalling phases is very powerful. But it's not too notable when you could just stun them instead. Stuns are just better than having them take an action. So again, Antiquarian's not very measuring up in that kind of sense. Minus 15 accuracy does have some applications against someone like the Prophet, for example, though. So it does get mentioned, but I wouldn't bring an Antiquarian to the Prophet. I just don't do that. Fortifying Vapors, actually a surprisingly good move. It's a heal, and it's a very small heal. It's 3/3 heal at max rank, but it does give her the ability to take someone off of death's door, and that's all I really could ask from the Antiquarian. We want to make sure that no one dies, and the Antiquarian can help you with that. And it also gives that target that you're healing a blight and bleed resist, so that they can't get dotted. So if they get knocked back down onto death's door, there's a smaller chance for them to get dotted, and so you don't have to have that awkward scenario where you have a character on death's door with a dot on them. It doesn't say here, but this move is launched from the back two ranks and can heal any of the characters in your party. So it can heal rank 1 and rank 2 as well. Right. So this is a move that's definitely a staple. Do not take this off of her bar. Very good move. The dodge buff. Now we're getting somewhere. Let's talk about the dodge buff and why it is probably the most broken move in the game. And only the Antiquarian can do this for your teams, for your comps. If there are the kind of most broken comps in the game are dodge comps. Because if you can't get hit, you can't get stressed, and you can't get 0 HP'd and death stored and death blown. So let's see, can we not get hit? Is it theoretically possible? Right? So the average dodge in the game is roughly like 26-ish, I think it was. Let's check that real quick. I'm gonna look at my spreadsheet. We'll go back to the spreadsheet later, maybe. It's 26. So the average character has 26 dodge. If we run 2 Antiquarians in the back, where this can be launched, and use the dodge buff 3 times each, we get plus 60 dodge on characters. So the dodge of the average character is already going to be 86-ish. And then we're going to run dodge trinkets, which roughly are 15 or 10. Definitely, Camo Cloak is 15 dodge. And Ancestor's Cloak is like 10 dodge, I think it was. Oh, no, 15 dodge as well. So, and then there's like a bunch of other trinkets that do 15 dodge, maybe some that do 10, but generally you're going to be running 15 dodge trinkets. And you can run 2 of those trinkets on everyone, so you get another 30 dodge out of your trinkets. So you've brought your 86 dodge up to 116 dodge, right? And then you can get quirks, and that'll give you about, I mean, there's Luminous, which gives 5 dodge, there's Evasive, which gives 5 dodge, and there's Corvid quirks that give some dodge, maybe. Corvid's Grace is 8 dodge. You're looking at another plus 18, so you're getting up to 130-ish, kind of, if I did my math right. Yeah, you're getting up to 130-ish dodge, and that is enough to dodge everything in the game. That's enough to cap out your dodge, which is essentially, well, what I mean by cap out your dodge is it's essentially enough to make sure that every single enemy in the game who has high accuracy only has a 5% chance to hit you, which is the lowest you can go. You can only lower someone's hit chance to 5% in this game, in Darkest Dungeon. So we've capped out, and there's only a 5% chance for your party at all to be hit. That's pretty powerful. This is arguably the best skill in the game. It's just that it's on the Antiquarian. So you have to run 2 of them. And while you're setting up these dodge buffs, while you are using Invigorating Vapors for the first few turns, you'll get hit. So you'll get whittled down slowly across the course of the dungeon. And you might come to a point where you are whittled enough that you're going to run a healer. You don't want to get killed, right? While you're setting this up over and over again. So if you're going to run a healer anyway, why not just run not a dodge comp? Why not just run a healer plus an Antiquarian plus 2 other characters? So ultimately, as broken as a dodge comp is, it's not very viable in a regular dungeon. Even if you max out all of the dodge in the world, it still takes time to set up. It still takes 2 or 3 turns to get the dodge comp rolling. And slow comps like that just don't work in the hallway fights because you get whittled down and ultimately killed without a healer. So as OP as this skill is, it's just not good enough. I still have it on my bar. It's good to be able to manipulate chances sometimes. In the stalling phase of the fight, you can have her heal, or you can have her buff everyone's dodge to kind of get everyone some like flexibility in terms of recovery. If they dodge some moves, they don't have to recover from those moves. You could use this as utility. Just if you decide that Festering Vapors is just not going to connect, you can just open with an Invigorating Vapors instead. That's fine. Definitely better than Flash Powders, actually. Flash Powder in that scenario. Yeah, Protect Me is her last move. Antiquarian's weak. Oh, let's talk about what it does, right? So it's limited to 3 uses, and what it does is the Antiquarian can be launched from any rank. The Antiquarian selects one of her teammates, marks that target, and forces that target to guard her, right? And in exchange, she buffs that target for 8 dodge and plus 20 protection. So what she does is she creates a mega tank with a skill and makes that mega tank protect her and protect itself, obviously. So this skill is just essentially your way of telling the Antiquarian to just get out of the way. Just stay safe and just let someone else do all of the work, right? That's pretty good. We want the Antiquarian to do that because she's very frail, she's very weak, she's very vulnerable to damage and dying. So if you can tell her to stay out of the way, A+. Good skill. This is a staple all the time. So between the staples, I would say these 3 are staples, and you're going to figure out what to do with Festering Vapors, whether you want Nervous Stab or not. So let's go through her. Oh, let's talk about her crit buff, right? Her crit buff is 10 dodge. That means if she crits, she gets 10 dodge. We don't have crit moves. We're not gonna consider like crit buff. It's a good crit buff, but for her, it's a good crit buff for her specifically. But we're not gonna be using it often, and I'm certainly not gonna build crit just to activate that. Let's talk about her camp skills. Right. So this is a direct upgrade to the Grave Robbers camp skill because it can be used 3 times instead of only once. It gives you a random supply item, which could be very powerful. Not really, though, because generally you're only getting 1 food from it. That's the level of power you should expect out of it. Very not notable. Trinket Scrounge. You basically spend 2 points, and you get a random trinket. And that might sound really powerful, but I'm going to show you later when we get to talking about trinkets. And we switch back to the wiki page. I'll show you the chances of Trinket Scrounge, and you're going to see that most of the time, you're going to be getting a common trinket. Which means you're going to be getting a trinket that you really don't want to use, so you're probably going to end up selling it for gold, which means you've essentially spent two camp points for a trinket that sells for about 1,000 gold. You've exchanged 2 camp points for 1,000 gold. That is horrible. Do not do that. There are rare scenarios where you're going to find a very rare trinket to be really happy and call the Antiquarian a goddess, my bad. She is a female. You're going to call her a goddess, but those chances are not very high. I would not recommend using this unless you have extra camp points left over. This is definitely one of the last things you'll be spending camp points on. Strange Powders. Actually very strong. It gives a bunch of resists to 1 companion on the Antiquarian's team. So, Blight, Bleed, Move, Debuff, Disease. I would still use this skill if it only said plus 20% Bleed and Blight resist. Those are the most important stats to buff in terms of relative to the other ones, because they prevent your characters from getting dotted, and preventing your characters from getting dotted means they are more durable, and not only that, they will avoid that awkward scenario of being on death's door and having a dot on them. Actually, very notable. This camp skill is actually very notable, and it's very cheap too for a 2 cost, in terms of camp points, and it's certainly not like a skill you'll be clicking right away, but it's definitely one of the first Antiquarian skills you should be considering clicking to help maybe someone that's on lower health or someone who you think is pretty frail in the front line. I could see myself clicking this for an occultist. My bad, I keep calling him Ock, but I could see myself clicking this for an occultist, which I like to run occultist in the front line. I could see myself clicking this for a flagellant. I could see myself clicking this for what's another frail character in the front line? Maybe a highwayman. So the last skill that the Antiquarian has that I want to talk about is the last camp skill is Curious Incantation. It's a 1-cost camp skill, and it gives her it buffs herself. She buffs herself for minus 50% stress. This is actually a very powerful skill. It is a very strong thing to buff yourself for minus 50% stress, and it's only costs 1. So this is actually very notable. If you've got a camp skill left over, if you've got a camp point left over, I would actually cast this over resupply, unless you really need supplies for some reason. But that just means you probably under-prepared for the dungeon, and I don't recommend unpreparing. So I would say cast this over that. It's another way to say to your Antiquarian to get out of the way, so you don't have to babysit her as hard. So these are the Antiquarian's very rare and rare trinkets. Fleet Florin. Oh, actually, yeah. Antiquarian is actually very special in that she has very good trinkets all around. Even her common trinket is very good. We'll talk about all of them actually this time. Fleet Florin. Well, let's start from the very rare and go down. Or go up, rather. Candle of Life. Plus 50% healing skills. And plus 15% max HP. So, what this means is that the 3-3 heal that and the Antiquarian heal does is buffed to what? 4.5, which bumps up to 5. So she starts healing for 5. Which doesn't sound like much. And yeah, it's not much. but it is some way to get more mileage out of the Antiquarian. You'll be spamming that healing skill pretty often with her, because I mean, she really doesn't deal damage, so it's not like you're really missing out on damage if you're not using her Festering Vapors. So it's a way to get a lot of mileage out of her. She'll be spamming that move, and buffing that is good. 15% max HP, another way to tell your Antiquarian to get out of the way, and just so you can babysit her less. Pretty good. This is a very good trinket for the Antiquarian. I think it's almost a staple. I would almost call it a staple. There are different things to run, and we'll see. We'll see what they are later, because we're gonna get up to Bag of Marbles, which I actually think is a real staple. Fleet Florin is +4 speed and 20% debuff skill chance. Right. Oh, I forgot to mention it a while back, but the only two debuff skills the Antiquarian has is Festering Vapors, which has a debuff for the Blight Resist for the opponent, and Flash Powder, which is a minus accuracy. Flash Powder we don't like to run, and we're not going to help. We're not going to use Festering Vapors just to debuff the enemy's Blight. It's okay with a Plague Doctor kind of sitting behind you, but Plague Doctor has disgustingly high Blight resist chances, Blight skill chances anyway, so it doesn't really help. The most important part of Fleet Florin is actually the +4 speed, which I bashed. I bashed Get Down for giving the Antiquarian more speed earlier, but it was mainly because you also had to spend an action to get that speed. And Fleet Florin can actually work in a specific comp, which is the dodge comp. When you get the dodge comp running, and you don't have dodge trinkets yet, you can use the Fleet Florin to just speed up your Antiquarian so they can use the dodge buff earlier than the enemies can attack you. That's why Get Down is bad. It's because you have to use Get Down first in order to then use the speed, right? So it costs you some action economy to do that. Whereas if you run Fleet Florin instead, it doesn't cost you action economy. Action economy is something we want to preserve as much as we can. Carapace Idol, 25% protection. This is actually very, very high of a protection number to be granting on just an uncommon trinket. I am not a personal fan of protection, mainly because it doesn't do that much to help against dots, but it is a way for you to tell the Antiquarian to get out of the damn way. And we love to tell the Antiquarian to get out of the damn way, because otherwise she'll die, and we don't like people dying, right? So this, I think the second highest... Actually, let's take a look. Let's open up Barristan's Head, which is a Darkest Dungeon, which is the other really notable protection trinket in the game. Oh, it's a collector, that's right. It's 25 protection. So Barristan's Head, which is one of the more notable which is the most notable protection trinket in the game, gives 25 protection at the cost of 20% extra stress. And you're telling me the Antiquarian just gives 25 protection on an uncommon trinket. This is a pretty good trinket. It's too bad that it's locked to the Antiquarian, though. This is actually pretty shitty. Don't run this. This is the Antiquarian's worst trinket. Healing received is not that great. Even though it helps the Antiquarian stay alive, you would much rather buff the healer's healing ability than the Antiquarian's healing received. Bag of Marbles gives her +10 dodge. Just another way to tell the Antiquarian to stay out of the way. +10 dodge is actually the best way to do it. Bag of Marbles is one of the strongest early game trinkets for the Antiquarian, mainly because she just doesn't get hit, and not getting hit is much better than trying to heal her up. Yeah, other notable trinkets for her are obviously the double dodge trinkets to keep her out of the way for the dodge comps. Double dodge trinkets in the late game are also pretty good, just to keep her out of the way in general. So yeah, I would recommend double dodge trinkets. So for example, Camouflage Cloak plus Ancestor's Coat. The issue is Ancestor's Coat is a unique trinket. So instead of Ancestor's Coat, you can also run... I forgot what the name was, but Shimmering Cloak? I think it was Shimmering Cloak, yeah. Shimmering Cloak gives like +8 or 10 dodge. I don't really know, though, because I don't really run the dodge comps that often. They're not very viable in the hallways, again. So let's talk about the last thing about her. which is positioning and partners. Oh, yes. Also forgot to mention, she's actually an excellent candidate to put your scouting trinkets on. Like for example, that would be that book. What is that? Survival Guide. The Survival Guide, the Ancestors Map, I think are those the only two? The Seer Stone. Oh, those are the three. I'll just name those three. Those three are good trinkets to have on her. She benefits the least from actual real trinkets, so you should give her the trash trinkets, kind of, is what I'm trying to say. Right, so let's talk about some notable party members or team comps with her. Let's try and reason out like a good team comp. So we've got the Antiquarian here. I'm going to start her in position 3 or 4. We're going to figure out where we want to put her. Let's put her in 4 for now. Right, so we have a skill here that forces someone to guard her, right? And let's try and get some value out of that, because it'd be nice to kind of target one of our friendly units that can make use of being targeted. And as I say that, you might think to yourself, Riposte. Riposte is excellent for that. And yes, it is. Highwayman is excellent as a team member for her, right? And that's pretty good. Highwayman is a good team member. You can force the Highwayman to guard the Antiquarian, and then there will be 2 people with Riposte kind of getting hit. There will be 2 people on your team who have Riposte, essentially, because the Antiquarian will redirect the attack to the Highwayman. And that's very good. Other notable team members are Man-at-Arms, which kind of helps with the dodge comp idea, because he has Bolster, which buffs dodge. And he also has a Riposte, so you can, instead of, if your Highwayman is getting low, you can instead use Protect Me on the Man-at-Arms. So he has Retribution, which has a Riposte. It's a lot weaker of a Riposte, so I don't actually recommend that line too often, but it makes sense. You can do that. Let's see. The last team member, obviously we don't have a healer right now, so you can do a lot of things. You can put an Occultist here, call that a comp. You have Riposte forward, and then Occultist can heal, cover up. Protect Me on the Highwaymen, and you're good. That's one way to do it. Or you can actually put a Vestal in here as the healer. Then you've got the Collection. Ooh. You could do this, and I actually recommend, since we have a Highwayman idea, we have a Highwayman guarding a Antiquarian idea, to actually move the Antiquarian in position 3, because position 3 will get hit a lot more than position 4 will. So redirecting more attacks to the Highwayman and having a Vestal heal him up repeatedly is a pretty good way to get through a dungeon. This is a comp I would recommend right here. I would recommend the Occultist comp I built a few seconds ago. Other things that work well with Antiquarian is just a lot of damage, so we can actually switch. We could do something more like this. Have a Riposte forward, and then have a Riposte active Highwaymen with a Hellion in front, with a Vestal keeping them all healthy. Or we can have, we can have a Shield Breaker. Where's the Shield Breaker? Shield Breaker. Where are you? Oh, here she is. And we can have like kind of a Riposte, Pierce, and then like some kind of Adder's Kiss, point blank shot idea here, just to kind of end the opponents as fast as possible. You want to get out of the fight, because the Antiquarian is not that useful in those fights. So high damage comps, pretty recommended. But ultimately, I would still recommend probably this comp to be the best. All right, so let's put it all together, right? So we've got an Antiquarian here. She's got terrible stats all across the board. She's got terrible moves all across the board, basically. She's got very few useful moves that aren't just her putting the burden on someone else. She's got a very low heal, very good trinkets to kind of get her back into at least playable. She's got good camp skills, generally useful-ish, not really amazing. She's got no stuns, can't do damage, can't really heal that well, and she's horrible, just all in all. Her only purpose is to make money, and gold quickly becomes obsolete in the late game. So what tiering do I give her? I give her the F tier. She's very bad. Yes, she's that bad. You do not want to take Antiquarians with you to bosses, obviously. with a few exceptions, but we're gonna just slide over those. The Siren, you can take her to. Yeah, you don't want to take her to bosses, and that's because she sucks at battle, which is 90% of the game. She's a D tier character, and there's no F tier because I don't believe any character is actually unplayable in the game. She's still playable, and she can still work in certain comps, but she is probably the worst character in the game. So she gets the D rating.